BMW would like you to know that this 2026 i7 xDrive 60 has a 31-inch screen for the rear passengers, automatic doors, and enough cashmere to furnish a reasonable apartment. What they're less forthcoming about is the adaptive air suspension, four-wheel steering, and a boost paddle that makes 6,000 pounds accelerate in ways it has no business doing. Let's find out what BMW really built here. Now, this doesn't accelerate like a performance car. It accelerates more like infrastructure, steady, purposeful, and completely indifferent to what's going on around it. Like the highway just decided to arrive sooner. On this cold asphalt, the all-wheel drive system distributes torque between the axles seamlessly. There's no wheel spin and not even the faintest suggestion that this big luxury sedan is doing anything unusual. This doesn't have the acceleration violence of the M70. It's quieter, and in a lot of ways, it's actually more impressive. Under acceleration on these terrible roads, the torque distribution tells you all about BMW's engineering priorities. There's no plateau, there's no mid-range surge, no point at which this i7 has decided that it's interested. From the moment you ask, you get. What isn't interesting is how much. It's how the xDrive system manages direction of travel under power when the surface isn't cooperating. The four-wheel steering and the torque distribution working simultaneously produces a strange sensation. And if you listen carefully, what it's telling you is that you're being corrected before you make a mistake. The basic drive mode that I'm in here is not just drive, it's B, as you can see on the screen, but it really doesn't matter. What does matter is when you get into this B mode, which requires from park pulling on the shift toggle twice to get into B mode, is that you get more aggressive regenerative braking, so that this is fundamentally a one-pedal operation, and the brake pedal itself becomes a bit redundant. In the interests of science, I did test this on my handling loop, and test conditions were a little less than ideal. Cold, damp tarmac just above freezing. The xDrive doesn't simply divide torque front to rear, it's making torque decisions faster than your brain can form excuses. Exit a corner with some enthusiasm and this i7 just complies. If that's a coincidence, BMW should start selling coincidences as options. This boost function gives you a 10-second countdown timer, and I guess that's because BMW decided that maximum acceleration should resemble an event that you register for. You, sir, have 10 seconds to merge. Good luck. The extra torque is real, and the theater is also real. At any speed, the cabin is so well isolated from what's going on outside that you need to be paying attention to the speedometer, because it's the only thing that's going to tell you how fast you're going. Subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Non-subscribers hope the algorithm will show it to them eventually. And if you want to control when you see our episodes on YouTube, well, that's what the subscribe button does. This episode is powered by Joule. Tap your card. That's it. No account, no app, no membership tier. What most people don't know is how the station works. Behind the charger is a Joule hub, a battery system that charges slowly from the existing electrical service and then delivers up to 350 kilowatts to your car on demand. The grid sees a modest, steady draw. You see a DC fast charger that works. For the owner of this site, that distinction is significant. No utility upgrade, no multi-year construction timeline. A Joule installation deploys on infrastructure that's already here. 97% network uptime because a battery that's been charging all day doesn't care how much load is on the grid when you plug in your car. Joule is Canadian built and expanding across Canada and the US. Visit joulepower.com. On these broken secondary roads outside of Toronto, the adaptive dampers and the air springs are doing some serious heavy lifting. Big impacts just disappear, and any changes in the surface don't really affect what's going on in the cabin. What isn't interesting is this i7's composure at the limit, because this is an i7, not a Z4 after all. What is interesting is its composure everywhere else. Whether it's on the freeway or on some broken city streets, this i7 just glides over everything. These M Sport brakes have the thermal capacity to handle anything this i7 can throw at it. Power is not the issue. To be fair, I have a thing about brake pedals, and for me, the issue is that first 20% of brake pedal travel. It's that transition from regenerative braking to mechanical braking where the brake pedal isn't as precise as I'd like it to be, and it's a little bit more of a suggestion rather than a command. Right in the middle of the pedal, there's a brief, vague negotiation going on between the software for the regenerative braking and the mechanical braking as to which system is actually decelerating the car. In terms of stopping power, there is no issue. This stops confidently, as you can see, and there's no trouble with braking power whatsoever. Plus, ABS intervention is extremely subtle. With this four-wheel steering at low speeds, the rears turn out of phase or against the fronts, giving this remarkably large sedan the turning radius of a Mini. At higher speeds, the rears turn in phase and with the fronts, so lane changes are completely unremarkable and passengers don't even notice they're happening. BMW solved for this i7 size and mass by adding steering at the rear axle, which adds cost, complexity, and about 70 pounds to this car's curb weight. And the four-wheel steering is doing exactly what it was designed for, and in that kind of context, it kind of feels like magic. The difference between the comfort and the sport damper settings is not subtle, and it's easy to think that the difference might not be that significant when you're just driving around. But I tested it on Drake Street, which is a street filled with speed bumps. And in sport, you don't exactly glide over those speed bumps. You definitely feel them, you notice them, but in comfort, this car just absorbs those speed bumps and you carry on like nothing ever happened. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, well, the merch store is open, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and less time worrying about manufacturer blacklists. No pressure, just an option. The fundamental setup here behind the wheel is ergonomics done right. Seat adjustment, steering column adjustment, and their relative positions to the pedals is signature BMW, and I'm seated perfectly here behind the wheel. And this matters in a massive luxury sedan, even though BMW's marketing department would like you to think that this car is all about the second row. Thankfully, BMW's engineers had different ideas. I gotta say, the i7 is one of those cars whose interior is better than the exterior. It's better designed, better resolved, and much more considered. The individual Gran Lusso package, BMW's name for this interior option package, has better materials and dinner party pronunciation, and it actually delivers. This Bowers & Wilkins sound system from the driver's seat or any seat in this cabin sounds excellent. And to my ears, it's among the best in the business, but it's also irrelevant to the direct driving experience. And I think that might be the correct relationship between a high-end sound system and a massive luxury sedan that also handles. The automatic doors close with a touch of a button in all four places, as well as right here in the driver's seat, which is genuinely useful. What BMW didn't budget for is how they sound when you close them by hand. For a car with Rolls-Royce aspirations, the thud lands somewhere closer to a well-built crossover. For all the modern BMWs we've tested, I've become a fan of this curved display. And that's because it does a couple of things really well. It displays all the information I'm looking for cleanly, and it resists glare from direct sunlight. What doesn't resist glare in this i7 is the piano black, all of the shiny surfaces across the dash, these haptic controls on the steering wheel. And on bright days and certain circumstances, parts of this interior are working against the driver. The glare can be a little much, especially for a car at this price point. Drive mode selection resides in the infotainment screen, which means that changing drive modes at speed becomes an interesting affair, because nothing says sport mode better than taking your eyes off the road at highway speeds. The gear selector is this crystal toggle on the console. Back in the old days, you'd find a massive shifter here. The thing is, it succeeds in cleaning up this area and it works as a shifter. What it doesn't really do is provide you with that physical feedback you'd get with an old school automatic shifter. The rear door displays let passengers manage heat, windows, lighting without involving the driver. Thoughtful. They're also standard on this car, which means BMW included these features before asking who would actually use it. The like button tells YouTube to share this episode with more people like you interested in an episode like this, and if this video gave you more information than anything contained in a brochure or a press release, well, that's the entire ask. That's what this car told me after a week behind the wheel. What 2 years worth of posts on owner forums tells us is something a little different. First, active roll stabilization, the active anti-roll system that makes a 6,000-pound sedan corner flat, was available as an option on the xDrive 60 at launch. BMW then removed it from the order list and reserved it exclusively for the M70. The official reason was supply chain constraints. The unofficial reason, per the forums, is that BMW was stockpiling the hardware for M70 production and future warranty repairs. Owners who'd spec'd their 60s without it discovered the omission after the window to change their order had closed. Second, that 31-inch screen, well, it requires a stable eSIM connection to stream video. After a late 2024 over-the-air update, owners reported the eSIM situation became performance art. The screen shows network data, then streams nothing. The owner fix is a $50 Chromecast, and your phone is a hotspot. There's a 14-page thread called Theater System Solved. And as you can see, obviously it works just fine on this 2026 model. Speaking of software, owners have another revelation. Some owners have experienced something unusual with the dual-zone climate sync setting. That function that links driver and passenger temperature apparently for them resets to off every time the car powers down. BMW acknowledged this as a bug, promised an over-the-air fix, then reclassified it as a feature, according to some owners. The forum's response to that reclassification is something that I can't repeat here, but the sentiment was consistent across platforms. And for those of us in northern climates, another revelation. This is an EV after all. Owners who live in regions with winter report sub-zero temperatures drop real-world range to 130 miles at 80% charge. That's not an i7 problem, of course. That's experienced by every EV in cold temperatures. And in general, i7 owners love their big BMW sedans. Speaking of which, if you own one of these or have some quality seat time behind one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong, because real-world experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn on a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. So what did BMW build here? Well, the brochure answer is an executive sedan with a cinema screen and automatic doors. The driving answer is that BMW built something the brochure wasn't really advertising. The air suspension manages 6,000 pounds with a composure that has no obvious justification. The four-wheel steering makes maneuvering a full-size flagship feel like a negotiation rather than a commitment. For drivers like you and me, perhaps that brake pedal is the one unfinished sentence. Everything else delivers. This 31-inch screen and the automatic doors dominate the brochure because BMW understands who writes the check for this i7. And that person is not primarily a driver. What makes the i7 interesting is that BMW built the chassis to work correctly for a driver anyway. Torque management, air suspension, damper calibration, the four-wheel steering are not compromises made in the service of a rear seat passenger. They're engineering decisions that persist whether anyone notices them or not. Yes, this car is sold as executive transport, but it drives like BMW couldn't help themselves. And I have to say, this brass metallic paint has presence without being ostentatious. It's also the correct answer to the question of how to spec a car at this price point without the finish doing all of the talking. If you're buying this to drive, well, skip that rear seat lounge option, accept the brake pedal for what it is, and just enjoy the fact that BMW made this i7 a driver's car. That's the i7 xDrive 60. Subscribe if you enjoyed this, don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store is here if you want to help support more of these. See you on the next one.